And welcome in everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. We have a draft episode today. We're going to be talking about some of the draft prospects in fantasy relevant positions. We're going to do quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers today. We're going to talk about some of the tops and then some other guys that we like. But first, we got a couple of news stories we want to talk about. Jalen Hurts signed a massive extension with the Philadelphia Eagles, a 5-year, $255 million contract with just under $180 million guaranteed. This is a big deal for the Eagles. They lock down their starting quarterback. Important for the Lamar Jackson situation right now, as he only got $180 million guaranteed, and the reports are that Lamar Jackson wants over $200 million guaranteed. So will Lamar see that? We will have to wait and see. But one thing Lamar does like to see is the fact that OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., is now a Baltimore Raven. He signed a 1-year deal with the Ravens worth $15 million guaranteed, and it can be worth up to $18 million with incentives depending on how the season goes. That's definitely something that's going to make Lamar more likely to come back to Baltimore, and something we like to see. And we're going to stay in the AFC North at the wide receiver position. My guy, Allen Robinson, has been traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a late round pick swap. It's a deal that the Steelers really didn't give up too much. The Rams are going to eat part of his salary, but now Allen Robinson gets a fresh start with a new quarterback. Him and Matthew Stafford really never got on the same page. We saw him get targets, but they just never seemed to kind of click together. We'll see Allen Robinson in Pittsburgh in this new offense, and we can see, is Allen Robinson washed, or can he have a resurgence? He doesn't have to be the wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh. He can just come in and get some targets, and I think he can be productive. I'm interested to see what you guys think. Do you guys think Allen Robinson can have a resurgence in Pittsburgh? Let us know using the MEedia App. The MEedia App is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone. It's a great app. You definitely need to go check it out. You can host your own virtual press conference. You can change your background to whatever you want it to be. You can trash talk your fantasy football. Maybe you're in a dynasty league. You want to trash talk your league mates. Maybe a bad trade just went down, like Justin Herbert was acquired for Dak Prescott in the 112 in the Superflex League. I'm like, I don't really know what's going on here. But, definitely go check it out and let us know and answer this question. Do you think Allen Robinson can have a resurgence? Check it out, the MEedia App on Google Play and the App Store. All right, guys, what do you think? Allen Robinson going to show out in Pittsburgh?
No.
Yeah.
No.
They got to throw the ball first.
Right. Right. They have Justin Jefferson out there. It wouldn't matter. They don't throw the damn ball.
Very true. Very true. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited. Maybe there's a little bit of some Allen Robinson fantasy value. He can come in and be like a wide receiver 3. Maybe start him every once in a while. But as I said, we're doing some draft content today. We're going to be talking about guys who are coming into the league. Draft hasn't happened yet, so we're going to be talking about potential landing spots for these players and whether or not we think they can be fantasy relevant and relevant in the NFL. As I mentioned, we're going to do quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs. But we're going to start off with the main one. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks, and we're going to talk about the favorite to go number 1 overall right now, and that's Bryce Young, by far the commanding favorite to go number 1 overall to my Carolina Panthers. He is smaller than, C.J. Stroud, only at 5'10", weighed in at under 200 pounds, so it's not great. But when you see the stats that he puts up in Alabama, he's been smart with the football, 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions last year, had a PFF grade of 91.5. So that's pretty good. The really big knock on his game from everything I see is that he is small, and people are worried about that. But if he can withstand the hits that he's going to take in the NFL, the Panthers' offensive line has been much better last year in comparison to previous years, so they can help to keep him upright. He has the ability to extend the play, and he's been fairly accurate in Alabama. So I am personally excited. I think he is probably the number one quarterback in this league in the draft class. He did really good on the S2 test. He scored in high 90s, which is something that we've seen in past years has been a fairly good teller of whether or not a quarterback is going to be decent in the NFL. Guys like Justin Fields had a really good high test, and there's a bunch of other quarterbacks as well. So I like Bryce Young. He is obviously, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I know he's going to the Panthers. But what do you guys think about Bryce Young? Is he your quarterback one? And do you think he can be successful in the NFL?
Honestly, the only quarterback right now, for me, after seeing what he did to Georgia's defense, is C.J. Stroud. He is the only quarterback to really stand up to that defense. So he's the only one that I would be willing to take the chance. I like Bryce Young, but I just think C.J. Stroud is a little bit more accurate. I think he's a little bit more solidly built. So We'll see, though. We'll see.
Yeah, he is definitely a bigger guy. He's 6'3", over 200 pounds, which is definitely something better. He's more of a prototypical, stand in the pocket, throw the ball. He can move around when he needs to, but he really didn't have to in Ohio State because he was playing on such a high-powered offense. The ball was constantly out of his hands quick, and he had some of the best wide receiver talents we've seen in college football for a while. In that trio he had this year, and he had Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson the year before with JSN. So he's had definitely the help around him in a good offensive line. My biggest thing right now is it's all the off-the-field things that we've been hearing about C.J. Stroud. He did not do too good on the test that Bryce Young did well on. It's a test that you can study for and prepare for, so that's something to be concerned about. People are concerned about how coachable he's going to be, and that's a concern, especially when you're trying to take someone at the top of the draft. And also that reports came out today, which is the 19th of April, that he ghosted the Manning camp that he was supposed to go to. He was planned to go to the Manning camp, the Manning Quarterback Academy, and then he just stopped responding the day before and didn't end up showing up. So there's just a bunch of different things with C.J. Stroud. I think he is probably just talent-wise, he's the safest of all of the quarterbacks in this draft, and I think he can be very successful. But whatever team gets him has to make sure that these off-the-field things aren't going to become an issue, because we have seen other quarterbacks, they think that they're all that, and then in the NFL, without the all-star talent that he played with in college, when they're so much better than everyone else that they're playing against, that could be an issue. So we'll see where it goes between him and Young. Will, what are your thoughts on Stroud and Young?
I'm okay with both. I just don't know if there's a clear, real dominant NFL QB1 in this draft. I think there's potential. I think, honestly, the top of the quarterback is not a surefire superstar to me, but I think the later round quarterbacks have a greater chance of hitting than most people think. I think there's some quarterbacks in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round that could really hit if they're in the right situation. They may need a year or two to sit on that bench, but and I think watching the last couple of years, you've watched teams draft quarterbacks. So what's San Francisco and Green Bay doing, right? Are they stuck with their guys? Are they moving them? It may drive those quarterbacks even further down. They may go from what should be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick to 4th, 5th, 6th. And so, I like the overall class. I'm just not sure how the top of the class is really going to do long term.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm fairly confident that Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud can both be competent NFL quarterbacks. Bryce Young's just got to stay on the field, I think, is really his biggest fear. And C.J. Stroud just has to make sure that this off-the-field stuff does not affect him when it comes to being in the NFL. There's a couple other quarterbacks who are projected to be top 10 picks as of right now. We're talking about Will Levis, who's currently projected, has higher odds to go number 2 than C.J. Stroud does.
Oh, please.
I was kind of surprised by that as well. He has higher odds currently to go to the Texans than C.J. Stroud does, because I think this off-the-field stuff has been coming up very, very quickly for C.J. Stroud. I guess it pushed Will Levis up the board for Vegas. To me, I would not be happy if my team was drafting him. I'm not super sold. Coming from Kentucky, I'm not sure it's going to, come well on an NFL field. He had a low PFF grade in comparison to the other two quarterbacks we've talked about so far. He was in the 60s as opposed to Bryce Young and CJ Stroud were 90s and 80s. He's obviously bigger. He's 6'4", almost 230 pounds, so he's definitely got that frame. I've seen comparisons to Ben Roethlisberger when it comes to Will Levis. I'm not sure, maybe just size-wise, I guess. And if you look at them with the helmet, they kind of look the same. I saw someone had a picture of them side by side, and I was like, he just looks like a younger Ben Roethlisberger. Not sure if that's the comparison or not. But I'm probably out on Will if he is a top pick, and I don't think he's really the guy I would be targeting in any of my rookie drafts. You guys both on the same page here? You're out, especially if he's in the top 10?
I've been out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard for fantasy owners because I just thought what if Detroit took him?
Yeah.
Right now, Houston, I'm not touching him. Detroit, I will think twice about whether or not a year sitting behind Goff is he their starter.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Anthony Richardson. I actually like Anthony Richardson, but not at Houston. But if he's in Detroit, that's an interesting for dynasty leagues. That's an interesting. If you have a high first round pick, are you willing to draft him and sit on him?
See, I think that I would rather have Anthony Richardson in a fantasy league. Doesn't really matter where he goes, in my opinion. He has the rushing upside and he has the physical abilities that Will just doesn't have. In comparison to obviously Anthony Richardson, who's probably the most athletic quarterback we've seen come out of college ever. He had a perfect RAF score 10, which measures all sorts of different abilities in comparison to other players at the combine and stuff. The only concern is, will he be able to develop into the passer that he's going to need to be in the NFL in comparison to college? 53% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns and 9 interceptions through the air. Those are numbers that aren't really, if you just purely just go look at his passing stats, you're like, this guy is not being drafted. But it's because of that, that ceiling that he could reach that I think has pushed him up high on a lot of teams' draft boards. I like him for fantasy. I think ideally he goes somewhere and he doesn't have to start this year. But I would not want him as my starting quarterback as my NFL team because I don't believe he's going to pan out. Unless he goes to the perfect situation. Jeff, what do you want to say?
What's the one guy you say, Zach, you were just worried about him throwing the ball all the time this past year?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's that guy.
Yeah, I mean, so 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Those are Jalen Hurts numbers. I was kind of thinking about Jalen Hurts when I read those numbers off.
You can only, maybe make it to the Super Bowl. Who knows?
Yep. Jalen Hurts definitely made me eat my words there when it came to my concerns with him. But I think Anthony Richardson's in a little bit different of a situation. Jalen Hurts in college was throwing the ball relatively well. Just didn't quite come in the NFL. And I think that the NFL is it's so much of a harder game that it's hard for quarterbacks who are so focused on the run in college to kind of develop the passing when it comes to the NFL. It's kind of something you need to develop in college. Yeah. We've seen Lamar Jackson, who wasn't great in college, and he's been okay in the NFL when it comes to passing the ball, but he was elite on the ground. But it's not that often you see guys, Malik Willis last year, who was really good on the ground in college, but the passing wasn't quite there. And now we saw him try and throw the ball last year in the NFL, and it did not look good. So I'm a little worried. I think he has to go to the perfect situation, sit for a little bit, and then just get him all the reps you can, wherever you can, and hope for the best.
So honestly, when you look at the top 10 of the draft, there's really only one team that fits that to me, and that's Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit is, to me, if I was Detroit at 6, if Richardson's sitting there, I'm taking him.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if, they could take him at 6. The Colts could take him at 4, but I don't love that landing spot for Michael Pittman's sake. I don't like that landing spot. Maybe
if he's there at 9, I think Chicago thinks twice.
I don't think Chicago thinks about it. They've invested. Justin Fields is their guy.
Okay, as a Viking fan, I hope they keep saying that.
Because because if they were willing to move on from Justin Fields, they would have just kept the number 1 overall pick and taken the guy that they fully believe in. I think you can't trade back and then get rid of Justin Fields. I don't think that's quite what they're thinking to do. I think they're fully confident with Justin Fields. But the Falcons are another team that could take an Anthony Richardson, have him and Ritter compete and see what happens. But I'm not super in love with that. You got a couple more quarterbacks we're going to talk about here. Just quickly throw them out there. Hendon Hooker, Tennessee quarterback. Yeah. He's a little bit older, which is his main knock, is that this guy's coming into the league and he's already older.
A lot of these guys are older. I mean, honestly, I was looking at that the other day. A lot of these guys are 5th or 6th year because of COVID. They played an additional year. And I think the average age of these top 10 quarterbacks has to be like 23 or 24 this time.
Well,
because Hooker's 25.
Yeah. Bryce Young was 2001, so that puts him 22.
Right, and that's kind of old. Right?
22 is kind of old, but it's not super old. I think CJ Stroud's
23, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'll pull
let's say this with Hooker and what's the kid from BYU? Because I think he's 25. DTR at UCLA is 25.
No, Stroud's 21.
Oh, that
Stroud's
now.
21.
Hooker's
Young
25,
is also 21.
Okay.
So Young and Stroud, who we all three of us have as the consensus 1-2, aren't that old. But then you get Will Levis is almost 24. So when you start to get down the list, but Hendon Hooker being 25 already is definitely a concern. He's coming off the ACL injury, so he could probably fall. Maybe that's good for him that he falls, and he falls into a better team. He's really good at not turning the ball over in that kind of way. 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions last year. But that problem is going to be his age, especially if he's not quite ready. Teams don't feel like he can play right away. Then he's got to kind of come back. He might not start till he's 27, maybe, depending on where he goes.
Oh, but quarterback's going to 40 now. And unfortunately, and that might be the new norm if you're a really good quarterback. 40 might be the new norm. Even if Hooker gave you 7 years of starting, quality starts. Okay.
That's why I think you could see him go later to a team where he doesn't have to start. He could end up going to Tennessee. You could see, stay in Tennessee, just go from.
Yeah. But that's a second round pick, right? That's second or third round if he's doing that.
Yeah, I think he'll go early second, if I had to guess where he'll go. It's just tough to predict exactly where a guy like that's going to go because he's older than teams want, and he's coming off a big injury. But he is definitely talented. He's good on the ground, and he's smart with the football, which is something that's definitely important, especially going from college to the NFL. You don't want to have a bunch of interceptions in college because then we know exactly what you're going to get. He could end up coming in and being like Teddy Bridgewater was at the beginning of his career, where he's super smart with the football. He's not going to go out there and lose you the game. But maybe he doesn't have that same ceiling that a Bryce Young has or an Anthony Richardson has, but he could still be a solid starting quarterback in the NFL. And then one guy Will wanted to bring up, Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. Will, what do you want to say about him?
And I just use him as an example. I think Tanner McKee, I think DTR, I think Hooker, I think, is it Hall from BYU? I honestly think like those guys, I think 1 or 2 of them could pop. And if they go in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round to a team that didn't get in at the top of the draft and is now looking for their quarterback in that second tier, and that's probably even late 3rd, late 4th round. Boy, man, like you put DTR in Philly or Kansas City or San Francisco where the pressure's not to start, and you give him a year or 2, even if he never starts, it's a quality backup. Same with Tanner McKee. Stanford's had a rough couple of years, but McKee's a talented quarterback. I mean, he played in the Power 5 conference. He started, 4 years? He got hurt. Offense changed every year. there's some depth at the quarterback position this season and this draft season. So we'll see. I like the quarterback depth, especially for fantasy. I think there's good. If DTR is drafted by Philly and you have Jalen Hurts, you better get DTR in your draft.
Yeah, that's something to look at is where these guys go and who they're backing up. If you think there's a chance that they start,
Wrong bird.
Wrong bird.
He's going to Seattle.
Oh yeah. Well, you think DTR is going to Seattle? You don't think Anthony Richardson or somebody gets? Oh,
that first pick, unless Richardson falls to 20, possibly.
Richardson ain't falling to 20.
I think Seattle would look at Richardson if he was sitting there. He'd have to be hard to pass up at the least if he's sitting there for you guys.
Nope, because if
you won't get him at 20.
He's
gone by 15.
If Will Anderson is available, he's coming, or the kid from Georgia. One of those two are coming.
Yeah, I think it was I don't know. Let me pull it up. I think it was Phil Simms talking about Will Anderson. He said Will Anderson shouldn't even be a top 10 pick in this draft.
He said he shouldn't?
Yeah. So Chris Simms has Will Anderson as his number 5 edge in this draft class.
Ooh. Wow. Okay.
I was just sitting there like this guy. I'm not sure exactly what Chris Simms is on, but yeah, he said that he's his number 5 edge in this draft. Wow. Just another reason to ignore everything Chris Simms.
Yeah, Chris Simms. Chris Simms is really wrong about shit. That's the nice way of putting it.
But Zach Wilson was the next Patrick Mahomes, so we definitely need to listen to him.
Exactly.
If he hadn't gone to the Jets, maybe.
yeah, maybe. But he went to the Jets, and he did not quite turn out the way he was, I guess, supposed to.
Maybe he could be the Patrick Mahomes of the USFL.
He could very well do that. That is something that he could do. But we talked about the quarterbacks. Let's move on to the running backs, a position where, in Dynasty, everyone seems to need running backs on their team. We'll start it off with who, most people has as the clear 101 in Dynasty rookie drafts, Bijan Robinson. I think this is, he's by far the best running back in this class. He profiles to be a good, he's just under 6 foot tall, 215 pounds. So he's not super small. Like I think there's a bunch of running backs in this draft class that are smaller, under 200 pounds, under 5'10". That's just kind of what we're seeing coming into the league. Robinson is not that. He had a 95 PFF grade last year, 1,500 yards, 18 touchdowns, but he can also do it through the air, 19 receptions for 314 yards. And I think that's something that people are going to be looking for. He can be a 3-down back. To me, I think Robinson's going to be a great starter in the league. I don't know where he's going to go. Ideally, he'll go somewhere where he can get a lot of work in his rookie year. But I think that there is a chance he could go to a team where maybe he doesn't have to be that year one, and then he kind of takes over year two. Like maybe there's a couple of different teams that he could go to. People are really talking about him to the Falcons, which I would like, depending on how they would be able to get him. If they could trade back up into the first, I wouldn't necessarily, or maybe they trade back and take him. They have Tyler Algier, who I also like, but Robinson would go in there and he'd be the immediate RB1. So that's probably really good for his fantasy value. But he could go to a team like the Eagles. They could use another running back in Philly. People have been talking about him to New England, and I would absolutely hate that for Robinson if he went to New England. He would not be my Dynasty 101 anymore if he went to New England. I think he'd fall probably a couple spots just because that is such a terrible destination, especially with Ramondre and James Robinson there already. But are you guys both, in on Robinson? You think he's going to be a good, solid NFL running back, and where do you think he's going to end up?
That's the thing. It ends up. It depends on where he ends up. You know, I don't think it's just going to be anywhere. I actually kind of like if he looking at whatever happens with Tony Pollard, he could be a Dallas pick. And I'm just kind of looking like that might be a really good spot. He would be on my radar if that's where he went.
Running backs have been really devalued, right? We all know that in the NFL. If you're after 20 and below and he's sitting there, the value to your team as an asset outweighs any other player on the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's talented, and he could be probably top 5 in this draft class based on talent. Just the fact that he's a running back brings him down the board.
So if you're Seattle, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Vikings, the Jaguars, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Bills, Bengals, Saints, Eagles, and Chiefs, that's the last 11 picks. If he's on the board, you take him. I don't care, Vikings, if you have Dalvin Cook. You cut Dalvin Cook, you take him, and then you announce Dalvin Cook is cut.
Yeah.
Because he starts, he's young, and he's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And you get 5 years. 5 years on the late first-round contract is with a sweet spot in the first round. The 5 years at the top of the first round is still a good deal, a fifth-year option. But the real value in the first round is the late first round. You know, the guy.
The fifth-year option does depend on Pro Bowls and that kind of thing as well. So it can go up and down depending on how he performs. I just pulled up his current odds for draft position. Dallas is currently the favorite at plus 550 according to DraftKings. And then the Chargers, depending on how the Austin Eckler situation unfolds, they could draft Bijan and then trade away Austin Eckler, Philly, and then Atlanta. Washington is another team that, they really do like Brian Robinson, but they're bringing Bijan and have Robinson in the backfield. They could do that. Cincinnati, depending on what happens with Joe Mixon, and then New England, which I would hate. Detroit, maybe he goes to Detroit, but they have David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift, so I'm not sure I love that. And Houston has decent odds because they have the 13th pick as well. This is my whole thing with Dameon Pierce is I won't be surprised if Houston takes a running back in this draft class, and that's going to eat away at Dameon Pierce's work. So that's another situation where he could go in and he's the RB1. And I think that's something that
I think we're all going to be shocked wherever. Now, if Dallas drafts him, I don't think they get rid of Pollard. I think if the Chargers or the Vikings draft him, because it's just, you're looking at your draft board, the gap is going to be huge between talent for your team and what else is on that draft board in the late 20s. If I'm the Chargers, hey, Eckler's in the last year of his contract anyway, let him go. Let him go.
Well, hell, they still got Isaiah Spiller, too. They got so many guys, man. Jeez.
If there's not a defender or a wide receiver in the mid-20s, that is a sure bet like Robinson is. And people are going to regret passing on him in the late 20s.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just the truth.
Yeah, I think so. I think, he is just your prototypical running back. He'll come in, he'll do everything for your team. As I said, some of the other guys in this class are smaller. My RB2 in this class, we're going to talk about now, Jahmyr Gibbs, is smaller. He's under 200 pounds, 5'9". He profiles to probably be, he probably won't be an every down back in the NFL. I don't think that's something that teams who draft him are going to want to use him for. He's great in the receiving game, though. 44 receptions for 444 yards last year at Alabama. He still did average 6 yards per attempt, which is great. 7 touchdowns on the ground. I think he can come in, and I think he possibly could be a 3-down back. I'm just not sure whatever NFL team he goes to, they will view him that way. The Chargers are currently favored to draft Jahmyr Gibbs. If they draft Gibbs and get rid of Eckler, he could be the new 3-down back in Los Angeles. And I think that's probably best case scenario for him is that they draft him and trade Eckler. Because they already have kind of a smaller back as their current RB1 with Eckler. If he goes there, I think he could profile to fill that role. The Cowboys, Bengals, Chiefs are another location to watch when it comes to pass catching back. Buffalo. So there's just a few teams. The Broncos are even up there in odds to draft him. I like him as a prospect. It's just smaller backs, people in this draft class. That's what you get. You get smaller backs. Are you guys okay with getting a smaller back? You think he's just going to profile out to be just a pass catching back in the NFL? What are your thoughts?
And look, I think there's Rob Bijan, and then there's everybody else. And if you don't take Bijan in round 1, honestly, if I'm a team, I think I can get the same quality running back in the 5th round I can get in the 2nd round. That's just the truth.
Yeah, it's a deep, small running back class. Like if you just want a pass catcher, you can get a good pass catching running back later on in the draft. It just comes down to what exactly these teams have when it comes to grades on these running backs. Because for me, it's Bijan, and I think there's a gap, and I think it's Gibbs and Zach Charbonnet with UCLA, and then I think there's a big gap. So I kind of have 3 tiers there where it's Bijan, then the other 2, and then it drops off after them.
And if you looked at mock drafts 2 months ago, Charbonnet was a maybe late 1st round pick, 2nd round pick. He is now trending bottom of the 3rd. Holy crap. That's going to be a steal for somebody. Like the Cowboys could get Charbonnet in the 3rd round. Yeah, it's not Robinson, but teaming him with Pollard.
Well, yeah, he's another guy who's actually, running back size. He's 215, 6 foot tall, and he can also catch the ball. 37 receptions last year, so him and Bijan are kind of the do-it-all running backs of this class.
Yeah.
They're regular NFL prototypical running back size, and they can catch the ball. So I like both of them in that regard. And just Gibbs brings that extra level. He's the best, in my opinion, pass catching back in this draft class. So when you look at it that way, I think that those 2, it's kind of is Bijan, and then there's a gap, and then it's those 2, and then I have a gap, and the rest of the running backs kind of can be classified in that. Where you said after them, I think you can get kind of the same talent in the 2nd to the 5th, depending on how these running backs fall.
There's kind of a dark horse though, because he didn't go to the combine, and he was I believe he was hurt towards the end of the year. Kid Kendre Miller from TCU.
There you go. I'm gonna pound the table on that one. And that's a 5th round running back, and he is.
Yeah.
And then I look McBride from UAB. Is it UAB? McBride?
Yep.
Dwayne McBride?
Yeah.
They say, he didn't play. Well, the offense didn't throw the ball. But to me, he's a 3-down running back. And that's a 4th, 5th round pick. So and I will say for fantasy owners, I think if I'm going to say a position I may focus on in the draft, it's going to be running back. I think these running backs are going to go to good teams, and they're going to be able to step in, and they're not going to be in a bad team situation.
I think the running back position will be very prominent in the 2nd round of rookie drafts in Superflex leagues. I think that you have to get the first 4 quarterbacks out of the way. You got to get the top 2 running backs out of the way at least, and then the top wide receivers. And then I think the running backs come off in a big gap because just looking down PFF's list here, you got a bunch of running backs who could they're all ranked closely together. When you get from their big board rank of 70 to 122, you have 7 running backs in that gap, and that's not a big gap on the big board. And running backs, as we said, they'll fall on the draft because there is a lot of talent in this running back draft class.
Yeah.
And teams don't value the running back position as much as they once did.
Yeah.
So I think that those are definitely all.
And for fantasy, I think you have to be careful too, looking at teams that are already stacked at running back. Like you almost kind of feel bad for this running back draft class. For the very top of the guys, they're going to have a spot. But there's some good running backs who aren't going to get drafted and maybe practice squad guys just because there's so much depth in the league right now at running back.
Yeah, that's the problem in the NFL right now is every team has, they're okay with their running game.
Yeah.
These guys have to come in and find a spot. And I think that's going to be a problem. We're just going to see from here on out, you're going to have your top guys, and then everyone else is just kind of, okay, we're good at running back. If you don't have one of the top guys, you just kind of rotate guys through, which is, good for the NFL, but not good when it comes to fantasy. You need to have
good for fantasy.
Bell cow guys, or you're kind of in trouble. Jeff, anything you want to add at the running back position here?
No, I just think there's going to be a lot of hidden gems. There's a lot of guys coming out. I even kind of like Travis Dye out of USC. I'm like, man, they got a lot of guys that are just are going to end up coming into camp that you didn't really hear until camp starts going, and you're going to be like, where did this guy come from? Kind of like Brian Robinson from last year.
Yeah, are there any of these running backs that you guys are really kind of hesitant on? Maybe like a Deuce Vaughn, hesitant, 5'5". That worries me a little bit.
The little guy. It depends on your league. It depends on how many teams you have and how big your rosters are. Vaughn may like our league with the practice squad, the taxi squad, may make sense, right? Am I going to draft him? No. Am I going to maybe spend some money on, depending on what team he goes to? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he, probably best case scenario for him, he ends up having a Darren Sproles-like career.
Yeah.
But that really didn't.
Remember Tariq Cohen, that dude wasn't big at all.
Yeah.
And
that's also true.
Man.
Well, we'll see. I'm out of the guys that, I see in top 10s a lot. Vaughn is the one that worries me the most just due to his size. 5'5" at the running back position is hard to do. I think Cohen was even taller than that, and he's been out with the same injury for how long? I don't think he's even back in the league yet.
Yeah,
Cohen is 5'6", so Sproles was 5'6" as well, I believe. So when you look at just running backs at that size, it's very hard to hit. But in the right situation, you bring him in on pass catching downs. He could be, play a James White-esque role in an offense, depending on where he goes. But like I said, there's a lot of smaller backs in this draft class that are going to get a bunch of third down work in the NFL. You're just going to see these guys come in. They're going to be okay for PPR. And if you don't play in a PPR league, I think you probably won't want a lot of these later round guys because they're going to get pass catching work as opposed to the rushing work that I think we kind of already have in the NFL. But let's move on to the wide receivers here. We definitely have a lot of wide receivers we can talk about. We'll start at the top. I have JSN out of Ohio State as my number one wide receiver. I think it's him. People are worried slot wide receiver, but that really doesn't bother me. I think he's going to be great in the NFL. He was super productive when he was playing with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, and he was the wide receiver one in that year with two guys that we've already seen come into the NFL and look great. Last year, injuries, obviously, so we didn't really get to see him play too much. But I think he still comes in and he's the wide receiver one. Maybe he's not the first wide receiver off the board. I think this next guy could possibly be because he is more prototypical, your stereotype wide receiver. But I think JSN comes in and he's the 102 in non-superflex leagues. And in superflex leagues, depending on how things fall, he probably is going to be in that 103 to 105 range for me. What do you guys think about JSN? Are you okay with him just being a slot receiver in college? You think that's going to transition well into the NFL? I think that's something that we see more and more of now, and I think people are starting to get more comfortable with it. But do you have any worries about JSN?
Nope. I'm looking at Chris Olave, and I'm looking at him. Same type of way, man.
Yeah, I think JSN's a solid, and that's why in our dynasty league, I have the 102 and the 103. Obviously, I think Bijan's going to go 101. I'm going to take Bryce Young to be the Panthers quarterback, and then I'm sitting there. I need a running back, but can I pass on JSN at the 103? I don't think I can. I think I will probably end up taking him and then hopefully trying to work something out to get Gibbs later. But it's just the talent is there, and he has a really, really good chance of being a solid wide receiver. And if the draft capital's there, a team takes him in the top 15, which I think could happen, he's going to be a great NFL wide receiver. We can move on to the next guy who could possibly go before him, Quentin Johnston. I think his main knock is the drops. He struggled with drops, but he is 6'3", 210 pounds, which is, what NFL scouts, that's what they want. They want a bigger bodied wide receiver, but a guy who, a bigger bodied wide receiver, you should be able to catch, most of your contested catches. And that was something he also struggled with at TCU. His contested catch rate was not good. The drops were a problem. And, he was good at yak in college, but always seemed to be one move, his little spin out. And I'm not sure that's going to work all the time in the NFL like it did in college. He's going to have to add some more bags, add some more tricks to his bag. Will, I saw you shake your head when I brought up Quentin Johnston. What do you have to say about
I mean, I think there's guys further down in the draft, like Jonathan Mingo, that are going to be much better NFL wide receivers than some of these top guys. And look, Quentin Johnston's okay, but where was he? When it mattered, where the hell was he? And in the NFL, you're not going to be playing against 130 college teams where the talent's diverse out. You're going to have to line up against the best athletes at cornerback in the NFL. And can you create? And I'm not sure he can create one-on-one. I think he might be a good wide receiver too. I don't think he's a wide receiver one in the NFL. That's just me.
Yeah, I think he's got the physical tools. He's big. He is fast. It's just going to come down to the fact of, can he get the separation he needs? Can he catch the ball? We saw MVS in Green Bay for a while. He found out how to get open, but he just could not catch the ball to save his life. And in college, you can get away with the drops. It's okay. In the NFL,
you can't.
If you're open and you beat, because he's fast, so he can beat the defenders down the field. You can't drop the ball. It's not going to work out well for you. So if he can get that okay, I think he'll be I think he could be a wide receiver one in the NFL if he can fix that. But I think he would definitely be a good wide receiver too. I would be quite comfortable taking him, mid to late first round in a rookie draft. I think he could be solid for your fantasy team, depending on the landing spot, obviously. Jeff, anything you want to say about Quentin Johnston?
Don't trust him. There, for some reason, TCU wide receivers always scare me. Forgot who it was. I thought was just going to go ahead and just turn out to be a great wide receiver and just did the exact opposite. So ever since then, I don't trust TCU wide receivers.
Quentin Johnston's going to be fine. I mean, he's a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. He's not a number 1. He's Jake Reed to Chris Carter.
Yeah,
That's what.
Are you talking about Doc? Are you talking about Josh Doctson?
Looking at some of the film, the drops,
Josh Doctson,
ain't Chris Carter's hands at all.
Yeah. No, I'm saying, but he's Jake Reed to Chris Carter. If he's with Justin Jefferson and he's the number 2 wide receiver, okay. If he's with Kansas City, where Mahomes buys you time to find, if you can find a gap in the defense, okay. Mm-hmm. If he's at Houston, is he a number 1 wide receiver? Hell no. Right? I mean, if we're talking TCU wide receivers, I'm more intrigued with Darius Davis coming in the late 6th or 7th round than I am draft value, right?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where he goes. I'm kind of interested to see kind of where this wide receiver class falls, because JSN to me is the clear number 1, and then after him, I feel like there's a couple guys who could just kind of come in, and teams might have him higher on the board. You look at Jordan Addison from USC. I think he's a guy that teams are starting to grow on. He had really good last year, obviously. He's fast, quick. He's 5'11". The weight is an issue. 170 pounds. We saw people were getting all over Devontae Smith for his size coming in. He's obviously made it work, and I think that's going to make teams a little more comfortable with Addison. But he profiles, he could be a good wide receiver. Maybe he ends up in Kansas City and he could be their number 2 target behind Travis Kelce. Or you go to Boston College and look at Zay Flowers, who's really good at getting separation. And that's something that definitely translates into the NFL, is getting separation.
Yeah. The problem for this rookie class of wide receivers is they're not as deep as the previous years, right?
Yeah.
As far as the top talent. after Justin Jefferson's class and the last year's class, the expectation, remember, it used to be wide receiver needs a year or two to adjust the NFL. Now the expectation is you got to come in and start. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if there's any wide receiver right now in this draft that is a day one true starter in the NFL.
I think JSN is.
Depends on what team he's on.
I don't think it matters what team. I think he's going to come in, and I think he will be productive in the NFL day one. I think, Addison, the size is a little bit of an issue, but I think Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnson, I think they can all come in. But as you said, expectations are high for wide receivers coming in, and I think this class, once you get past, for me, I have the top 4. Then you get down to guys like Josh Downs, who could be good, but we could also see, smaller wide receiver, super senior. We have small running backs in this class, old quarterbacks, and small wide receivers. Seems to be the reoccurring theme. But once you get past, you get to Tank Dell, Michael Wilson, Rasheed Rice, you brought up.
Mingo's going to be a steal. I'm telling everybody right now. 6'2", 220, he can run. It has good hands.
Another bigger-bodied wide receiver, and then
Jalen
Hyatt from Tennessee.
Mingo.
Who?
He's
Mingo?
Yeah. In this draft, he's going to go 4th round or something. Well, I don't know. Maybe some people have him going up the board real quick. He may sneak into the 2nd. He's just getting a lot of hype. He's at Mississippi. I mean,
I don't know what's happening in this draft, because for me, another guy with some of probably the best hands is Jalen Hyatt with Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's fast. I don't know. He's kind of reminds me of where he's under the radar like George Pickens was.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I see with him. I think a lot of it is just the names that they throw out there. Even though this class is a little bit smaller, there weren't even really, just blazing speeds during the combine. But I don't know. There's a lot of there's no clear cut. So I think that's why everybody's just kind of in a.
A.T. Perry from Wake Forest. If he's at another program, he's a 1st-round wide receiver. I mean, he's 6'4", 198, and he can catch. So it's Jeff. I'm with you. I get all the expert talking heads ranking these wide receivers.
This is the kind of draft I'm telling you right now where I watch what Sean Payton does.
Yeah.
This is the type of draft where this dude will pick somebody that you've never heard of, and he'll end up becoming like a top wide receiver. Zach, I know you're young, but I don't know if you remember Marcus Colston.
Yeah.
This is kind of that type of draft where Sean Payton will end up picking somebody like that, and he'll become like the wide receiver 1 in Denver.
Yeah, that definitely could happen. It's a class where we kind of see a drop once you get past the top guys, and then everyone else is just kind of, they're there, and you could kind of pick and choose where you want and where they're going to go. I think the main knock with Hyatt is that he really didn't take off till last year. He's breakout age is a little bit late in comparison to some of the other guys we talked about. So people have knocks for that. And people really just worried about, again, size. He's only 170 pounds, too. I'm looking at these guys, 170 pounds. I'm like, geez, what kind of durability does that come with in the NFL? And we really haven't seen that. We have seen it now with Devonta Smith, but can he keep that up? These guys have dealt with injuries in college already. So it's an interesting thing. Is there anyone else you guys want to talk about in this draft class? Any tight ends you really think are gonna break out right away?
No, I don't think any tight ends to him. Well, see, now tight ends have fallen into that age.
I'm not touching any of the tight ends in rookie drafts until maybe the late 2nd round of a rookie draft. If you're in a tight end premium league like we are, maybe at the end of the 2nd round, because tight ends don't normally come in, play great right away. You have some definitely physical specimens at the tight end position in this draft class, but will they turn out in the NFL, and will they get the targets and receptions right away?
Everybody's scared after Pitts, after Njoku, after
Evan Ingram.
You just go right down the line of guys that came out like in that first round draft and just never really did anything.
Yeah, I think.
Well, if I'm going to look at two tight ends, it's Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion, 6'7". 6'7".
That's the kid from Georgia.
And then I like Davis Allen out of Clemson. And these guys are going to go late in the draft. And honestly, they could go in as I like 6'7", 6'6" tight ends. If I'm drafting a tight end in a dynasty league, give me a big guy that may turn into a red zone touchdown, right?
Yeah, I think Jeff, you're talking about Darnell Washington there, 6'7", 2'8", 270. Just he really didn't break out in the pass catching work that you want to see from a tight end. Right. 28 receptions in 2022 for under 500 yards and only 2 touchdowns. He's really good in the NFL. I think he'll be really good when it comes to blocking. And he himself compared himself to Mercedes Lewis, so he'll block.
Which version of Mercedes Lewis? UCLA version or Green Bay Packer version? Because that's 2 different players.
I would maybe his ceiling could probably be prime Mercedes Lewis, but he probably his expectation is probably Green Bay Packers Mercedes Lewis, where he's blocker, and he'll catch a touchdown every once in a while because he's gets off the block. But yeah, I'm not super excited about the tight ends. I don't think, to me, Kyle Pitts, he was a generational talented tight end. I don't see that in this draft class. I can't really see a team that's going to take. Maybe at the end of the first round, a team takes a tight end, but I'm still not going to buy in. As you said, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts still hasn't really come out and broke out yet. That's probably because of the coaching staff and the quarterbacks that he's had. But, yeah, tight ends, I'm really staying away until you get to the end of the second round and this rookie drafts. I think, if you're in a super flex league, Bijan probably still goes 1. And then it depends on how much your league values quarterbacks. In our dynasty league, I think the quarterbacks will fly off the board super quick. I think, I'm going to take 1 at 102 if he's still there. So I'll take – if Bryce Young goes number 1 overall, I'll happily sit there and take Bijan and JSN. But Bryce Young's definitely coming home with me. And then Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will, I think they come off the board fairly quickly after that. People will probably start to trade up. You look at Will's team down here. Will has maybe 1 starting quarterback on his roster right now, and Ryan Tannehill in the Superflex League. So there's some quarterback needy teams.
I don't.
You're gonna have to watch that because if they trade up,
I don't. Look, I don't draft. I never draft for need.
Yeah.
That's the quickest way to screw up.
In rookie drafts, especially,
you have to go for the
talent. Yep. You have to go for the talent because this is something that is brought up. I said I really need a running back in that league. I have Breece Hall and Cam Akers, and after that, I have no one. So I really need a running back. But I can't just take Gibbs at the 103 when, in my opinion, JSN, who's going to be a 10-year plus starter at the wide receiver position, is sitting there. I gotta go for the talent that I believe in before I go for need, because going for need in a dynasty draft will set you back, and wide receivers just tend to be safer, especially when they've been taken in the first round. They hold their value at least for a while, so you can trade them maybe if you weren't happy with what you saw as a rookie year. And I think that wide receivers tend to be safer, but you got to go for talent.
I'm sitting at 5. I'm not reaching for Will Levis. Not doing it.
No. At 5 quarterbacks, I would probably be tempted to take Anthony Richardson if he goes to the right spot, just in fantasy.
But if he goes to the right spot, he's not there at 5.
Yeah. Depending on who has the 104, he won't be there at 5. But the guy at the 104, I don't really – will he take Anthony Richardson over C.J. Stroud? if Stroud ends up in Houston or Indianapolis, it's an interesting situation to be in.
Yeah.
Really, because we'll see where these guys land. Obviously, after the draft, we'll have a show. We'll come out. We'll talk about our favorite landing spots and some guys that maybe didn't land in favorable spots. Like maybe Bijan goes to New England, and what do you do with Bijan if he's in New England? Can you still take him at the 101? I don't think you can. Could I pass on Bijan at the 103? If he's sitting there at the 103 and he goes to New England, can I pass on him? Probably not. But it's
yeah. You got to make an educated guess. How long is that coaching staff there?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. As Will said, you got to bet on the talents of these guys to play out. And you get into the late second, third, or fourth round. You kind of go guys you believe in, but also go to a place where they'll have opportunity to show out. If you go to a guy who's never going to see playing time, but you think he's talented, that's not really going to work out so well. So you get a guy like Tyler Algier, who was good down the stretch last season. You could play him, and now he has way more value than he did in the third round last year, right? So I think that's the kind of guys you're trying to get. As we said, this is a deep running back class. We talked about the quarterback class is pretty deep as well. So you can take some backup quarterbacks in the wide receiver class. Maybe not quite as deep as expected, but you can still get some talent later on. Any more guys you guys want to talk about? Any tips for dynasty rookie drafts? Anyone who's watching, you guys want to give out any tips?
Draft best player available. Even if that means you overstack at running back or wide receiver.
You can always trade.
You can always trade, right?
Yeah.
And you just don't think the draft is going to define your final roster. Mm-hmm. It's about stockpiling talent and then setting yourself up.
Yeah, I agree. And my thing is, if you're trading up to get a player, don't devalue next year's draft picks because you're thinking, it's next year, but it's only a year away. It's not that far away. And I've seen people, they'll give up like a first this year, a first next year, just to trade up a few spots. And normally it doesn't end up going too well. You want to make sure that you're getting something else back. Or if you're moving up a lot of spots, okay. But if you're just moving up a couple spots and you give up a first and get nothing else back, it's probably not going to end up well for you long term. These draft picks have a bust percentage. You don't see all these guys hit. You see guys come into the league all the time that are supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to be the best prospects ever, and they don't pan out. So you got to take that into account. So don't over trade for your draft picks as well. I've talked already a couple guys about trading up to get some more draft picks, but try not to over trade.
I'm wondering if Zach is going to go ahead and take less for Trey Lance since he's trying to get a first round pick. Like, dude, he may not even be starting.
Oh, dude. Trey, to me, I wouldn't give you a fourth round pick for Trey Lance right now.
Hey, really?
Seriously.
Like, dude.
No, because I don't know. Like, he's obviously done in San Francisco. And so
maybe he might even start in San Francisco.
Oh, no, he's not. No, they're moving him. It is clear as day they're moving him. And who they move him to in a new system and having to learn, and he's running out of that contract. That is Trey Lance is like, why would you trade for what's his name with the Jets? You just wouldn't do it, right? It's unfortunately for Trey Lance. When he got hurt, and then Purdy did so well. It's for fantasy value. It's obvious they don't believe in him. It's clear as day the 49ers do not believe in him at all.
Yeah, well, they're in an awkward spot. You can't really, if Brock Purdy's healthy, you can't really bench him after he took you guys so far in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, Purdy came out this week. He's saying he may not even play this year.
Nah. He was saying that, but he wasn't. He didn't actually mean he wasn't gonna play this year. He was just kind of trying to downplay the situation because he doesn't want to have to answer all these questions and put all the pressure on him and Trey Lance. He's trying to keep it neutral. He said, "I'm taking it one day at a time," is what he said. He wasn't focused on whether he's gonna play this year. He said, "I'm taking it one day at a time."
Lance is gone.
Could be. He could be traded at the draft. We'll have to see how that pans out.
That's true.
If I was Houston, I'd be like, well, if I get him for a fourth,
D'Amico
He'll
Ryan.
go for more than a fourth. He'll go for more than a fourth.
Well, maybe a fourth with an escalator. I don't know how the 49ers have put themselves in a bad spot with Trey Lance.
But they also are kind of in a good spot because they have the ability to play the guy they took number 3 overall, or they can play Brock Purdy, who just took them. Like, that's a good position to be in if you're a team. You have 2 quarterbacks who could be good for you. Other teams, Houston, Davis Mills, there's a chance now that the Texans aren't even favored to take a quarterback, which means that you're going to get probably another year of Davis Mills unless they take someone like a Hendon Hooker in the second round or something like that. But they're now currently favored to not take a quarterback, which, sets, I have Davis Mills in our dynasty league. And if I can get a year out of Davis Mills, I'm okay with that. I'll trade him away to someone else because I don't really need him when I got Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. So we'll see how that goes. But for my sake, I hope it's Davis Mills again this year. I think he's a talented quarterback. You just need some pieces around him.
Yeah, I think the Texans are going to wreck everything and end up taking a defensive player.
Yeah, they are.
Jalen Carter or Will Anderson.
I think they take Anderson.
I do too.
I think that's the direction.
So then the question becomes, what is Arizona? How much does Arizona believe in what they have right now?
Yeah. But to me, Arizona needs to trade back.
Oh, I agree. But if all the other quarterbacks are sitting there.
No, you got to trade back. You can't take a quarterback and try and trade Kyler.
Do you know what kind of problems they would cause with Kyler Murray? He probably just wouldn't even show up. He would do something stupid. He would have to get in that contract.
I think Arizona has the first pick next year, and they take Caleb Williams. This will be Kyler's last year in Arizona.
I don't know. I think it'd be tough to move on.
Are you going to pay him? Are we really going to pay Kyler Murray?
They just
paid Lamar Jackson.
They already did.
They already paid him.
I know, but we can continue to pay him. They have outs in that contract. Like
I'm pulling up his contract right now. I want to see what the outs are.
I think his money's guaranteed like on the second day of the league year. I could be wrong on that, but I tell you, Kyler Murray. If I was the Cardinals, I'd be like, I gotta get rid of this clown. He's never going to put the time in to be a dominant NFL quarterback.
He's got, after this season, $48 million dead cap if they cut him post June 1. Or 81 if they cut him before. And
what
then
if they trade him?
Trade depends on how that's the thing with the NFL. It depends on how they work the trades because the player can restructure his deal so that it doesn't really affect the cap all that much. Or a player can just say, no, I'm not restructuring my deal. Have fun. Because with Aaron Rodgers right now, he'll have to restructure his deal to be traded because the dead cap on his contract is crazy. But he can make that happen.
That dead cap, right.
By restructuring.
Yeah.
So he can make things work in his benefit to get traded to where he wants.
We haven't even talked about that yet. Like
no one knows exactly what's happening.
This draft is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And you know what? If I was the Packers, honestly, what happens if there is a run on quarterbacks? What happens if it's crazy like Hooker's gone in the top 10 because everybody panics that they can't get a quarterback? Boy, Aaron Rodgers' value just went through the freaking roof for some team.
I don't think it really is. They have no leverage on the Aaron Rodgers situation. Aaron Rodgers wants to be in New York, and New York wants Aaron Rodgers. I think that Joe Douglas literally came out and said, Aaron Rodgers is going to be our quarterback. They just got to work out the deal.
What would be great is it all just blows up on the draft night. Because that would make the draft really interesting to watch Aaron Rodgers get traded to the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm gonna be packing all my stuff to move out while watching the draft here. So hopefully it keeps me occupied. Got to get everything ready. I move out on the Saturday. My final exam is the Thursday morning. So Thursday morning, write an exam, come home, start packing, prepare for the draft. It's going to be a busy draft week for me, but hopefully everything goes to plan. We're going to end the show here. We probably won't be back next week. as I said, busy week next week. But we'll definitely be back after the draft. We'll talk about some of our favorite landing spots, some not so favorable landing spots. Thank you, Jeff and Will, for joining. Thank everyone for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you after the draft.
Thanks, Zach.
See you guys later.
Later.
Happy draft day. Almost.
Happy draft day.